Hi, everyone. I just want to say again, as I always will, I absolutely love all of the support and all of the love. And again, it's just I'm in such disbelief that we're getting, I'm getting as much support as I am. I couldn't be more appreciative, seriously. And we reached 500 subscribers today, which is fantastic. That was really eye-opening for me to see. And the amount of views and likes and comments and just generosity that has been unloaded and thrown my way is absolutely fantastic. I'm so glad to see and hear that people are enjoying the content, the stories, my voice. It means a lot to me, and I'm extremely excited to continue down this path and see where it leads me in the coming months, years. But remember, none of it would have been possible if not for you guys. So, I was 11 around that time. I went to a museum with my dad in our old town. It was of the war era bomb shelters. When we were deep there was a hallway separated by a fence where there was some sort of engine, I believe. At that time, I wasn't really paying attention, but I saw a man walk out of a hallway next to the engine. I thought we were gonna get there later. As we were in the middle of the museum, we also saw stories about ghosts in there. There wasn't one about the ghost I saw. As we went back, I asked my dad, why didn't we go there? And he said that you can't go back there. As I looked closely, it wasn't a hallway, but there was nothing there. So the man was a ghost who walked out of a wall. Oh, forgot to mention, the ghost was a completely dark figure. So, I've had a few paranormal experiences in my life thus far. Some frightening stuff, but nothing that was actually dangerous in retrospect. I recently started a security job in a bank. I work overnight and monitor the entirety of the building's interior, as well as patrol out of the exterior. The building is 6 stories, with only the bottom one actually being the functional bank. The upper floors are mainly untouched, outdated offices with a few being rented by businesses. No one whatsoever is in the building of the nighttime, and surveillance doesn't cover the upper floors because they're so well separated from the bank. While doing my rounds of the upper levels and checked over unlocked rooms, bathrooms, closets, mechanical rooms, storage spaces, stairwells, the whole 9 yards. Didn't find anything, as usual, but while I was on the 4th floor, I heard someone call my name and heard a door close. Of course, I was freaked out, but I pushed through the fear and tried to stay rational. I did a second sweep of the floor, and again, nothing. Then I got really scared. I got to the stairwell on that floor and opened the door to listen. Stairwells echo really badly, so we're taught to be silent and listen for intruders. While I'm standing there, head peeked through the door, I didn't hear anything until I do. 2 men's voices came from the stairwell. I'm assuming up it. I announced myself and started up, but found nothing. I didn't hear any doors open or close, which I should have. Then, I'm at the last flight up the stairs to the roof, and I hear loud steps running up the stairs. I'm absolutely terrified and prepare myself for a physical altercation. Weapon at the ready, I wait for the perp to come to me because I'm on the high ground. The steps sound close enough that I should be able to see the person causing them, but I don't. Then I hear labored breathing with the steps, and still, I see nothing. Next thing I know, I'm physically pushed back. I didn't fall very far, more like collapsed into the steps behind me. The sounds continue to the roof door, and to my shock, it opens with a bang and then shuts. I actually saw it open and shut. It's normally locked, so I go to secure it and call the cops. But when I get to the door, it's locked. I have absolutely no explanation for this. I've never been pushed or physically touched by an entity, and I'm shaken badly. On top of this, the next night I'm sitting in the lobby with elevators behind me. Again, no one in the building, and I hear the outdated elevator go up some floors, stop, and shift with weight entering it, then come back down. I'm absolutely terrified as it touched down and the doors opened. No one in sight, but when I get up to look closer, steps pound towards me, push me over, then run up the stairwell adjacent to the elevator. I'm terrified to this building. I'm the first female guard they've hired. The men I've spoken to don't experience anything. It pays too good to quit, but I'm at a loss of what to do. I need help. I don't know what to do anymore. This all started 3 days ago. My door doesn't close at all the way up, so I use folded paper to keep it closed. Every time I put the paper close to the door handle, but when I woke up, the paper was all the way up to the top of the door. I thought it was strange, but though nothing about it, the next day was the same thing happened. I asked my mom and brother if they came in the room. They didn't. Last night, I marked where I put the paper just in case, but I wasn't prepared for what happened. I went to sleep at 1 a.m., but I couldn't sleep, so I turned my face to the wall. I stared at that for like 10 minutes. Then I heard the balloons that were on the floor move around and my carpet making noise. I didn't move a single bit. The noise continued for a long minute. I stayed in that position until I fell asleep the next day. It wasn't the best. Now, it's almost 12 at night, but I can't take my mind off of it. My room is completely dark, and I keep hearing sounds coming from the other side of the room. My arm that is facing that side, it's hurting. I can only describe it as someone scratches you with hundreds of needles. It hurts so bad, and the knocking doesn't stop. I don't know what to do anymore. I have had a lot of paranormal activity happen to me before. I'm just so tired of all of this. I have had many unexplained experiences in my life, but a few I know for sure were paranormal in nature. One of those encounters, this was 2019 in October, right before the pandemic hit. I had recently started a new job, but the office was 3 hours away from my home, so my friend sublet his studio apartment to me just 40 minutes away from my office. I planned to stay in the studio 3 days a week and would commute to my other home where my husband the rest of the days. Very tiring. So, this studio was locked for almost 1 year at this point. Hence, I cleaned it every evening till midnight after coming back from the office. The first week was very exhausting and dirty, so I paid no attention to any oddities, but still would feel panic and anxiety as the night grew. By the end of the second week, the house was almost set, and this particular night, I was done before midnight, so I finished dinner, lit a smoke, and sat on the couch facing the front door that was open. The studio was on the first floor and between two other studios. Both my neighbors used to work night shifts and lived alone. So, as I am puffing away, pondering on the day's events, a cardboard box full of books laid next to the door goes up an inch and drops right in front of my eyes. My logical side of the brain says maybe something was stuck under it, hence the box moved. So I decided to roll up a joint and observe if something else happens. As soon as I am stoned and relaxed, I hear music, laughter, running, chatting in the apartment left to mine. Now, this is a Thursday night, so I peep to check if I miss someone walking past my door to the neighbors, and I see a dark end of the alley and no one home. I chalk it up to me being stoned and sit on the couch again. Now, another 5 minutes pass, and the party gets louder, but the running is now from my left wall to the ceiling, then to the right wall, and this goes on. By this point, it is 1:30 a.m.-ish, and I have office the next morning, but I find no courage to go to bed as there is this heaviness inside the apartment. Panic and anxiety are all over me, but I don't see a reason for it. Just party noise. Finally, I puff another joint, say out loud, "You want a party? Go ahead. I have office. I will sleep." Tired, scared, I pass out. Next, I feel in the darkness someone sitting on me, and right in front of the bathroom, and to the right, a girl standing. You guessed it, sleep paralyzed intensely. The guy is laughing, and the girl is asking him to stop. I am struggling to wake up, but when I gave up struggling, I wake up to see the time to be 4:30 a.m. At this point, I jump, switch on all the lights, and call a friend who sublet his house, fully furnished. As he picks up, I say, "How do I get rid of the sleep paralysis?" I knew his history of sleep paralysis in the same house. He told me to find the iron dagger under the bed and place it under my pillow. I did it and felt some peace, but no sleep. The next day, no sleep paralysis, but I felt them both lurking around the small studio with odd sounds of things moving or lights flickering. I got so pissed, as was going through a lot with the commute and new office and reaching late and barely any sleep. I made a deal with both of them. I sat down on the couch and openly spoke. "I understand this is your home, and you don't want me here. I don't want me here either. So 3 days in the week, I will come and sleep here. Push me out 8 a.m. every day, and you can have the house to yourselves." I finished my smoke, removed the dagger, and slept off. The next incident is of sleep paralysis, and I see someone pushing me from my bed to the door, and the door shuts behind me loudly. The sound wakes me up, and I check the time and it's 8 a.m. This dream went on for 2 months, and 8 a.m. sharp every day, without fail. Then the pandemic hit, and I came back home, vacating the studio. Sweet, mischievous couple they were. Thanks to them, I reached office right on time for the next 2 months. Also, one night, my husband tried to surprise me, and I did the same to him. We ended up in opposite homes for the night. My husband is a skeptic, so I didn't tell him about the dagger to experiment if it was in my head or not. They did the same to him, and he said he saw the guy sitting on him and the girl just standing there. This was when I was around 9 years old. I was living in a haunted apartment complex at the time, so I remember being awoken by the sound of my baby brother crying. At first, I ignored it because I thought my mother would get him, but I had been mistaken because he had just kept crying, and it seemed that I was the only one that had been awoken from his cries. So, I had gotten up to calm him. I checked his diaper, nothing. I get him a bottle, he throws it. Nothing seems to be working. He won't stop crying. At this point, I'm wondering why Mom hasn't woken up yet. That's when I noticed something out of sorts. My little brother has been standing up crying the whole time. I didn't really think much about it because I was trying to get him to calm down. What I noticed is that he's pointing in the dark hallway. I'm confused, and his constant sobbing wasn't helping me think any better. I end up turning the hallway light, asking him if this was better, knowing I won't get a reply. He still hasn't stopped crying, and soon enough, I start crying. My mom still hasn't gotten up. My little brother is still crying and pointing towards the hallway, and I'm over here, crying, trying to calm him down. Honestly, I felt like something was intensely staring at us. I couldn't handle it, so I started yelling for my mom, but even then, she didn't get up. Then, I decided to start banging on her bedroom door, yelling for her to get up. After all this time, she gets up. The moment my mom walks into that room and calmed both me and my brother, the feeling of someone intensely staring at us just went away. "22 years ago, I lived in a house on a lake. I rented a room from a lady that lived in the other room. I had been living with a good friend, but moved out and needed a new place. My parents actually found the listing in the newspaper and set me up with it. Aside from a strange living condition of living in a 2-bedroom bungalow with a complete stranger in the middle of nowhere, it seemed like it was going to be nice. My new housemate had a large dog that actually kind of freaked me out a little. However, she was a super sweet dog. My housemate was never home. Between work, her friends, and her boyfriend, I saw her all of 3 days out of the 3 months I lived at that house. So, I took care of the dog. The thing about this dog, she would hide under the housemate's bed until she was hungry or needed to go outside. Never having had dogs, I didn't know any better. The first month wasn't anything to write home about. Got some awesome photos of the moon over the lake. Somewhere in this time frame, I started recognizing the facts above. I also started getting a weird vibe in that house. In fact, if I wasn't in my room, I wanted to be there only. I also only felt safe during the day. I use that term because the feeling at night was the same as if you think something bad is about to happen. The problem was, you couldn't quantify it. I started hearing knocking noises randomly in the ceiling near the kitchen. I figured it was birds, because there were a lot around. One afternoon, I decided to check out the attic crawl space located above the kitchen cabinets. It was a wood door with a single lock/latch on it and a fixed handle. I had eaten lunch and climbed up there to check it out. Opened the door and didn't feel threatened or anything. I peeked my head in and looked left and right over the bedrooms. Basic attic, nothing special. I closed the door and climbed down. From that moment on, everything changed. The dog came out of the kitchen and just stared at me. Didn't move. It honestly made me very uneasy. I tried the tricks. Outside, treat, play. She didn't move. So I went to my room and shut the door. In the weeks that followed, the events became more and more unnerving. I began to stop being able to sleep. I turned to leaving music on overnight. Very low volume, but on. As time passed, I got to where I felt like someone was standing in the corner of my room. One evening, the alarm clock, radio, in the living room turned on by its own. First, I didn't know it was even there because I never went in there. Next, over the last 2 months, it had never gone off. I asked my housemate about that and she denied setting it. She was visibly confused as to why it would go off. I began to feel as though I was being watched in every room. I felt as though the figure in my room was always there. I began to wake from sleep for no reason. I began grinding my teeth at night. I moved to sleeping with a black light on. Music became CDs that would repeat indefinitely. Now, I would wake up, look around, and see nothing, then try to go back to sleep. My housemate and a friend were at the house one evening, and the friend claimed to be psychic. She looked dead to me and asked me how I'm sleeping. I hadn't seen the housemate in weeks and hadn't told her about my problems. She then tells me there is an old man in my room, that he doesn't like me. I asked if there was anything I could do and she said no. I began addressing this man and asking him to leave me alone. Life got much worse. I would be on the phone with my now wife and would fall asleep. She would tell me years later there were strange sounds that scared her. She said she would stay on the phone to ensure nothing happened to me. I began to have regular nightmares every time I closed my eyes. My work started to suffer. I was exhausted. I began to see a dark cloud-like mist that appeared to pour out of the cinder block wall. In the corner, the man had been reported standing in. I would walk over and touch the area. Nothing there. Go back to bed. See, it's still happening. My wife was getting ready one morning and while putting on makeup, she told me the face wasn't hers. She left the bathroom and didn't go back. That night, we were both sleeping. She had become accustomed to my nightmares at this point. I had a dream that she and I were in the car and driving down the road. It was nice. I look at her and then go back at the road and in time to see 3 children in the road. The next sequence happened so fast. I had no time to react. Each face hit the windshield and appeared zombie-like. I immediately awoke. I was sweating, shaking, scared. My wife was instantly awake also. She asked what happened. I relayed the above story. Her face lost color. She looked very concerned. Thinking it was the content of the dream, I apologized. She sat silent, long enough to make me wonder if something was wrong with me. She broke the silence and said, Just before you woke me, I dreamed that we had just gotten onto your car. We left, and the next day I found somewhere else to stay. We moved to another state, and the first night in the new place, I slept nonstop. I woke up, rested, and recognized the silence in my head. On 28th of May, I lost my best friend of 7 years. He was a gentle soul, and he was in my grade, just 13 years old. He passed away in a tragic car crash. Now, this is the first time I have handled the loss of a close one. In my life, I only handled deaths of distant relatives or family friends. After I found out about his death, I began to believe he was in another universe. Every day without fail, before going to bed, I would write a letter to him and keep it safely in my cupboard. The night he departed, I imagined him standing next to me, and I told him everything I wished to tell him. I remember I was trying to talk to him and ended my note with "I love you so much. Please, I just want to see you one last time. I hope I was a great friend to you, and I miss you so much." That night I cried so much. My eyes were sore, so I tried to catch up on sleep for a bit. I had a dream he came to my house. I hugged him and we were watching TV or something. He did not talk to me or even say one word. The only thing he said was, "I love you too, and you were my best friend as well. I wish you well in life. Try to move on. I'll see you in a better place." That's all he said. I woke up happy and scared. It was almost like he heard me that night. Even after that night, I have had dreams that felt so realistic. Realistic dreams with him in it. One day, I dreamt he was talking to me. He pulled me aside, looked at me and said, "Wake up." And I woke up, just like that. In sticky situations, I feel like he's right beside me, guiding me. You were gone too soon. To start this is 100% true. I swear on my life that this happened. But whether or not you choose to believe me is totally up to you. I still think about this experience all this time, though I really wish I would just forget about it. It is the weirdest thing that has ever happened to me. So I have sleep paralysis episodes pretty often, maybe once every couple of months. A bit over a year ago, November 2020, I fell asleep on the couch and woke up to find that I couldn't move. I wasn't too scared, as, like I said, this happens pretty often. I lay still for a moment before I began to hear whispering and begin to panic a little bit. I can handle the paralysis, but the hallucinations terrify me. I listened to them for a minute before I felt myself move. I was pulled off the couch, and suddenly, everything became much more hazy. I could hardly think straight, and I wasn't scared anymore. I opened my eyes and saw myself laying on the couch. I had what you would call an out-of-body experience, the first and only time this has ever happened to me. I made it to the front door, which wasn't very far away as we lived in a small trailer home at the time. I don't know how exactly I got there, but I remember it being sort of difficult. My back was to the door now, so I used all of my energy to turn and see what was there. I saw this man, short, chubby, glasses. He looked sort of old and very friendly. I felt comfortable by him. I couldn't say anything, but he spoke to me. He said, and I will never forget this, "Your mom is very sick. and I came here to say how sorry I am." He watched me for a moment, and then suddenly I was back on the couch and could move again. I was very shaken because this wasn't like anything I had ever experienced. I've hallucinated during sleep paralysis before, but it was never pleasant, and I was always terrified. This was also the first time one of the figures spoke directly to me. It was also the first time I had seen a figure that wasn't shadow-like. And like I said earlier, it had been my first out-of-body experience. I told my best friend, who was staying over, sleeping in my room, what had happened, and she agreed it was creepy. I cried while telling her. I was paranoid for a few days that something would happen to my mom. Scary as it was, I forgot about it eventually, chalking it up to an unusual, scary episode. Here's the weirdest part, and why I would never lie about something like this. In December of 2020, my mom died suddenly. I won't get into the details as they are traumatizing and likely triggering. I haven't told many people this, as I don't think anybody would believe me. My mother and I were super close, and I feel like he came to warn me or prepare me in a way. I moved into and am still living in a student house for college about a year ago. This house is old as hell, and everything keeps breaking, but it's cheap rent, has good heating, electricity, and is in a good area in town. Around 6 months ago, me and one of my housemates started hearing shit that scared the hell out of us. It sounded like someone sprinting down the corridor upstairs, down the stairs, and would smack into the front door, then wait for a few minutes, then sprint back up. From where we were sitting in the living room, the front door was just out of view, so we couldn't see anything. I have to add that the sound was intense, like someone was on all fours or falling down the stairs or something. I gotta say that I had some questionable housemates at the time, so could have been one of them, but the weirdness doesn't end there. The noise got more frequent as well. Before, it was only really random through the day, but got more frequent and happened throughout the night. One time, I won't forget, is when my door was wide open, with one of my friends sitting on the chair next to my bed. I was chilling on the bed, facing the open door on my phone, when we heard the sprinting again down the corridor towards my room and smacked into the Hoover sitting just halfway out of view from my room. And me and my friend just looked at each other and just laughed in disbelief. I've overheard others in the house and their friends talk about how they think it's haunted, but I think it was just a weirdo in the house because of what I'd said, and I'm pretty skeptical. I don't know which worries me more, to be honest. Anyway, I'm still in the house and am still alive, so it can't be that bad, right? So, let me describe how the woods are shaped. I was in the same woods that I talked about a long time ago. It's about half a mile long and 150 yards thick between some houses, and a not very busy road. Sometimes, I feel like something is watching me here, but I've never had a weird experience until now. Anyway, I'll get into it. Over the last weekend, I wasn't in the forest, as I had some work and was overall too busy to go out and spend some alone time in it. Last Monday, I walk into my little camp, and I find it trashed. A makeshift bench I made was wrenched apart. It was nailed together. A sign and a signpost saying, camp that had my name on it was cast over 15 feet from where it stood. An entire wall of a cabin I made was torn down, and some guidelines holding the tarp on top in place were cut. There was no storm over the weekend, just a little rain if I remember right. Strange, I thought, but maybe some teenagers or a neighbor decided to vent some frustration by wrecking a camp. The damage wasn't that bad, and I fixed everything. Today, I was splitting some wood and carving it into pieces for a game I play with some of my friends. And I take a break and text a friend of mine for a bit. We talk about the forest and I tell him that the forest I was in is not scary and that I feel safe there. Just as I press send, about 50 yards behind me, hidden behind a hill, I hear a terrible scream. Not a fox. I've heard those. Not human, but more like a woman being murdered, crossed with a car screeching to a halt, but not either of those. I turn around and grab a knife off of my belt. That was strange. Just as I tell my friend that I'm not afraid, I hear a scream. Just wondering what all of that thought. Maybe I had my mind on skinwalkers and my brain misconstrued some sort of normal noise. Thank you everyone for listening. If your story was told, I'm glad I'm the one who could tell it. I appreciate all the love and support. I hope you enjoyed today's stories as much as I did reading them.